Welcome everybody to our 2020 Fall Distinguished Lecture Series, jointly organized by the Department of Religious Study and Religious Graduate Council, University of West. First, let me thank all of you for being here today. And I'm Miroj Sake, Chair of Department of Religious Study. In the year 2020, our department has been bringing distinguished speakers to the campus with the aim of providing the community with the platform to foster dialogue and cultivate enriching idea and continue an appreciation of learning Buddhist value and wisdom. Our mission is to provide Buddhist teaching and perspective to everyone in order to benefit others in every possible way. Our recent fall lecture given by Bhikkhu Bodhi, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, and Dr. Lancaster offer guidance for working with our fears, how to be happy, finding meaning in morality, practice of detachment, and cultivating compassion and resilience during difficult time. So today I'm very pleased to announce that Dr. Lancaster has generously agreed to offer monthly lecture series titled Buddhism as a Lived Experience for us. And University of West and I could not thank you enough for everything you have been doing for us. So this series will continue till June 2021, covering various topics of Buddhism, such as emptiness, giving, concentration, wisdom, enlightenment, and behavior. I hope you all will join us because you don't want to miss this opportunity to learn from him. So today, once again, it is a great honor to introduce and welcome our distinguished guest speaker, Professor Louis Lancaster, who need no introduction. So he is Emeritus Professor of Department of East Asian Language at the University of West, Berkeley, and the University of West. And he has published over 75 articles and authored numerous books. And he founded the Electronic Culture Atlas Initiative at UC Berkeley. And he's currently working on various projects such as Atlas of Maritime Buddhism and software development for use of canonical texts. The topic of today's lecture is change, the unshakable process of vanishing. And the talk will be followed by 15-minute question answer session. So please write any question you have in the chat box and I will put forward your question to Dr. Lancaster. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Professor Lancaster.
Thank you, Miroj, very much. President Ta, you're on. I think you wanted just to say a greeting to everybody. Would you like to do that now?
Okay. Thank you, Professor Lancaster. And we are so blessed to have you giving us the lecture and the series of lecture from January to May. I think we are very, very lucky to have a chance to listen to you, but I don't want to take away the time because the most important thing tonight is to listen to your lecture. I want to take this opportunity to wish everyone, and thank you for participating. And I want to wish everyone a happy holidays and may the new year bless you with joy, health, and peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much. Well, I do want to thank the University of the West for giving me this opportunity to give this series of lectures on Buddhist thought and practice. President Ta, Miroj Shakya, Jane Iwamura, Shorin Guo, Venerable Sirananda, Christopher Johnson, Fang Sam, and special thanks to Venerable Di Hung and Laura Nguyen for translating them into Vietnamese, as well as the others on the staff who make these sessions possible. It does take a village to do one of these online course lectures. It doesn't happen just automatically. But in particular, I appreciate being given free range to make these lectures more personal and experiential. And thanks to all of you who registered to continue participating in these events. Well, one of the most beloved stories in our culture comes from the pen of Charles Dickens. His short account tells us of an old man who has the suggestive name of Scrooge. Now, Mr. Scrooge is a heartless miser who torments his employee, snarls at the rest of the world, periodically shouting, "Bah, humbug." But in the course of one night, the eve of Christmas, he is visited by a series of spirits who annoy and then terrify him. Dickens may not have known how similar his messengers are to the three great messengers of Buddhism, but there is much that matches. Scrooge is shown a series of flashbacks to his life, and they are examples of his process of aging. And in one future example, his lonely death, as well as the illness of his employee's young son. The messengers who come to teach, and we might say save Scrooge, are successful. The next morning when he wakes up to the world and sees it with newfound wisdom and compassion, his whole existence is changed. Messengers were sent to awaken Scrooge, just as the Buddhist texts describe the great messengers as giving us the insights necessary to awaken to reality and to achieve enlightenment. Now, Dickens shows us that sometimes we are so fixed and obsessed with destructive behavior that it takes fierce messengers to teach us. I'm finding that I have numerous messengers telling me about the changes in my life that result in old age. These messengers are not demonic nor mystical. The most recent one was my 5-year-old neighbor. Every day I take a walk and I go by his house and we wave and greet one another. A few days ago, he obviously wanted to say something and I paused. To his mother's embarrassment, he asked me, "How old are you?" I answered, 88. And he beamed and said, "That's close to 100. It reminded me of an earlier message my granddaughter gave me when she was 4. We were sitting in my house interacting, and she looked at me for a long moment and said, "Grandpa, you are an old man." And then continued, "And you're going to die." I was taken aback, but I tried to deal with the confrontation by admitting that I would someday die, but I assured her, "Not right now." She then went on to give me the full force of her message and understanding. "Well, when you do, I won't see you anymore." Having made sure I understood the nature of life, she's turned back to her playing. No more needed to be said. One of the messengers forcing me to face up to change and aging came upon me in an art exhibit. The messenger was someone that I had worked with on a regular basis 20 years before. I noticed as I approached, and greeted him by name that he was puzzled. And so I said my own name to remind him. He was obviously surprised, and he gave me the full message about old age and change. Are you really him? I would never have recognized you. Well, it was confronting, to say the least. And I labored with my feelings about that idea for quite some time. More recently, I shared this picture with a friend. It is my wife and I at age 24 on our wedding day. Well, he was also startled and gave me the message. I would never have recognized you in that photo. No white hair, no beard, no wrinkles. I don't spot a single resemblance to you. He then sent me a photo in which he did recognize me even without the white hair. The only problem is that the photo is not me at some younger age. It is a picture of a young actor in the current remake of the film, The Invisible Man. For a joke, I sent the picture to my sister and asked her to help me identify when it was taken. She couldn't help except to say that it was when I was younger and still had dark hair. Well, here the messengers of old age have been showing me that my younger years are invisible, in the sense that my appearance has not been preserved over the years enough for my youth to be still visible. Not only is my youth no longer visible, I am more likely to be seen by comparison to a complete stranger. Well, one final example of my messenger is this picture of my great-grandfather when he was 62. My mother gave me the portrait because she saw her grandfather in my facial features. So for years, I had it hanging on my study wall as a picture of my old great-grandfather. On my 63rd birthday, I realized that I had just become older than he was when the likeness was taken. Now, when I'm nearly 3 decades older than he was at that time, his image begins to look younger and younger. I began to look less and less similar to him. I am continuing to change beyond recognition. Well, we can theorize about change and view it from a distance by discussing how our body is undergoing change at the atomic or subatomic level. I've given that lecture many times to my students. It was always intellectually satisfying. However, change is lived and experienced by us all in our daily existence. Change is not just an abstract concept which can be endlessly analyzed and discussed, separated from what we experience. The problem is that I don't feel the experience of growing old in that momentary existence of each thought event that makes up my consciousness. It is only in retrospect that I can recognize the changes that were going on at every moment, but I was unconscious of them. The Buddhist text suggests that the great messengers, such as old age, bring us a valuable message. So I asked myself the question, what's so valuable about growing old and becoming so changed that people can't recognize the young me in the old me? What do I gain by giving this change my attention or even my acceptance? Well, one solace that I've clung to over the years is the thought while my body is changing, inside I am just the same as I was at age 24. I am still me. But I don't think this is the message from old age. My brain has constructed my memory so that I have the thought that a part of me is unchanging. In Buddhist terms, my Atman, myself, is perceived to be the same decade after decade. However, the message from the tradition is everything changes from moment to moment, year to year. Nothing remains the same. Now I think I must really listen to the message of old age. I am not the same in my thought and experience that I was at age 24. It is an illusion, and it's a dangerous one. Buddhist texts try to convince us that everything changes, and we nod our agreement while we live with the comforting thought, yes, most things, but not my essential self. In the old TV series, The Twilight Zone, one episode is about an old man who is given the gift of being able to return to the past of his choosing, taking with him his knowledge and experience. He is granted some wishes, and he eagerly takes on the return to the past, being warned that he cannot leave it, but will have to live out the years of the lifetime of his new persona. Now, he wishes to own an old farm near his hometown because he knows there's a large oil deposit underneath it. And second, he wants to win the 16-year-old girlfriend, his first love. When he gets his second try, things go wrong for him. His old farm may have oil deep underground, but he is told that at that time, no equipment is able to reach that depth, and it will be many years before the oil can be tapped. His 16-year-old girlfriend is 16, and he has the brain and experience of an old man. So he finds her too young and without shared experience or interest. In other words, if we could go back to a much earlier time with our present knowledge and experience, we would find out that our inner self has in fact changed dramatically and fully. The illusion we harbor that when we are in our old age is somehow identical to who we were in our youth would be shattered. My picture of being 24 is physically very different from my present old age with white hair and wrinkles and weakened legs and limited energy. But my mental and my emotional structures are just as different. If I could talk to my 24-year-old self, I would try to give him a lot of good advice, dire warnings about how to deal with life, attempt to save him from mistakes. He would undoubtedly be offended by such paternalism, fully assured of his ability to function and live life. This is the message of old age. Our experience of who we are and what we believe and what we know and how we live changes. And our dependence on the thoughts that we're just the same inside as we were decades ago will mislead us as we make decisions and go forward in the present moment. Our experience is filled with memories from early childhood as well as adult years and the decisions we made as children and teenagers and young adults and middle-aged adults and old adults. Our decisions in the past were made with the information we had and could comprehend at that moment. Depending on a childhood decision to determine an action in middle-aged is very dangerous and often self-defeating. I'm becoming aware that a decision made in childhood is one of the powerful determinants for the way in which we live. In rational thought, I would never allow an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old to make a decision that would affect me for the rest of my life. So I should treasure my present moment. See it as the best possible place from which to determine my actions. A place of knowledge, awareness, experience. The messenger of old age is reminding me of the truth of the Buddhist teaching that I do not have a permanent, fixed, and unchanging ego or self. Well, there's another form of change that challenges us. Our world is constantly shifting, and with the development of technology, the change is accelerated beyond the comfort level for many of us. Google, Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, iPhones, apps are all part of a dizzying array of means of communication, information gathering, and machine-aided analytics. Methods that were constructed and used over the past centuries are being challenged or abandoned. Books, libraries, letters, stamps, archives, card catalogs, bank accounts, phones, advertising, newspapers have changed in style and usage beyond recognition. My generation is struggling to have any secure place in this world of social media and digital data. So where can I look to find somebody to guide me, to show me what is happening? We have to remember that Shakyamuni saw a fourth messenger, one who is calmly accepting the world and all its current flow. Where can one find the fourth messenger, the one with calm acceptance? You might be inclined to think that this is some older, wiser, more experienced person. And I want to assure you that I do not find help from the older generation when faced with the rapidly shifting features of our present age. If you think the messenger is anything like myself, disabuse yourself of such a notion. You cannot find this calm, accepting messenger about the shifting world of current changes in an older generation, and certainly not an old man like myself. So let's return to the tale of Scrooge. When Scrooge woke up after his night of change, he looks out of his window and finds a messenger. It is a young boy in the street. Scrooge asks him, What day is it? And what potentials are available? The youth tells him, it's Christmas Day. Scrooge then wonders whether the large goose is still available for a feast. The boy assures him that it is still hanging at the butcher's. Using this youth as his agent, he sends the goose to his beleaguered employee. Well, like Scrooge, we often have to look to the youngest among us for the calm acceptance of the world as it is at this moment. I have been, for years, been like Scrooge. When I wake up with a new idea or the potential of a new method to teach or research, the first thing that I have to do is to open the window of my upper story office and shout down to younger people. I have to ask them, what's going on in the computer world? What's possible? They are wonderful messengers about the changes of the digital age. They have no fear of the new, no regrets over having to abandon old methods. They don't spend time lamenting that the technology changes everything that has been valued in the past. They are just going on with their lives, using what is available to them. These young people are the ones who have what I'm searching for: calm acceptance. I remember when I made the step to own an iPhone, it took my granddaughters a couple of years to fully get me up to speed. They were born in the digital age, and it's not something that is new and threatening to their old ways of doing things. The iPhone is no mystery to them. It is just an ordinary fact of life for them. Having children as messengers shows me how important the younger generation is for us. They are the ones to lead us into a world that seems complex and confusing to those of us who are called immigrants of the digital age. That is why it is so crucial to recognize the messenger of change. The youth who have such ease with all the technology, we must learn to listen to them, how to ask them the right questions, how to appreciate the power of their calm acceptance of the new world. I've just taught an online class to a group of students in Vietnam, Australia, Taiwan, China, and the US. Those students already know something I have not experienced. Having made the journey of online learning, it's crucial for our educational system to listen to what they have to say. What worked? What was helpful? What was confusing? What was irrelevant? Well, when Scrooge woke up, he was excited, delighted in his newfound wisdom. He set out to learn how to live his life with joy, freed of the chains of his past fixations and clinging. The journey of understanding how to live in this new life for Scrooge started with questions to a young boy. Wouldn't it be wonderful to wake up like Scrooge every day with excitement, delight in the potential of what lies ahead of us. Our messengers provide the gifts that are needed every morning when we wake up. We need to decide what is appropriate for us as we are right now. Knowing how hard it is to have one's long-held fond beliefs shattered by the messengers, we need to remind ourselves to have compassion for every person who is struggling against the tide of life, the flood of sensory perceptions, the longing for permanence, the sorrow of loss, the search for meaning, the fear of the new and unexpected. I should like to thank the younger generation for their wisdom and strength. I need to hear from them now, how it feels to simply live with all the changes that technology has caused. Probably most of them would expect me to just get on with my living and be in this moment, in this age of digital resources. Just as my 4-year-old granddaughter tried to teach me, once you've seen the reality of life, go on living with whatever gifts are given to us in this moment. My task is to listen to the messengers that surround me, who sometimes annoy me, who threaten my self-image, who can calmly accept what frightens and confuses me. My task is to live my life, to live in my time, to live with all the changes that have over time been given. It is in those changes that we find creativity, promise of innovation, growth of spirit and intellect. Nothing less than life itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lou, for the outstanding and insightful talk. The change is inevitable, so just embrace it. But it's very hard for us to embrace it. That's the challenging thing for us. So here begins our question and answer session. So please write any questions you have in the chat box. So I have seen some already. So I will just read out. So the first question by Dr. Sojan Ko. Based on your own experience, how could we hold the awareness of the changing on everything persist, meaning unchanged in our mind?
I'm sorry, Miroj, your voice is very soft.
Sure, I will repeat again. Based on your own experience, how could we hold the awareness of the changing on everything persist, meaning unchanged in our mind? Can you hear it clearly?
Well, as I get the question, it's how can we find meaning in our lives when everything around us is changing, we're changing, we're not the same that we were years ago. The world is filled with all kinds of new stuff that we've never heard of. We don't understand it. We don't know how to use it. I think that's for myself, and I don't know how the rest of you will think about this, but for myself, the big issue for me is not so much to find meaning as to just how to live. How do I live with it? If I spend all my time thinking, what does it mean? I don't get to live. I really, at my age, I want to live my moments because I don't think I have so many left to me. So I really want to live the moments. And that's why I keep trying to think, how in the world can I, in this moment, figure out how to experience it? And not only just to experience, but to delight in it. We need to love life. We need to love our life. And that means we have to love what's happening to us at each moment, because that is our life. I don't think that answered the question, but those are questions that will keep on going for a long time.
Thank you, Luke. Second question from our student Thich Pung Han, Venerable.
Yes.
What do you think on so-called creator God in other religion, which is either Ishvara or Brahma? Man is subject to birth and death. Everything is subject to change. Is God's body subject to change and passed away? This is interesting.
Well, that's, of course, a very difficult question. Let me just say this. The Buddhist, and this you have to keep in mind, if you want to have a discourse with a Buddhist, as far as I can tell, for anyone who is informed by Buddhism, you have to understand that there is the firm position that everything has a cause. Everything has a cause. Something happened before this moment, and there was something before that moment. If everything has a cause, it means you can never find the first cause, because then you would find something that had no cause, and the Buddhists do not accept that. Consequently, they turn their back on the Indian concept of a creator, in the sense that there is no way to find the first moment. That's why I believe that if you really want to understand Buddhism, you have to begin thinking constantly about endlessness. And not everybody wants to. Endlessness seems like an endless task. So the creator idea of a first cause, of a first moment, is something which the Buddhists say you can never find it, because everything that you might find has a cause. And when you find that, that also has a cause. And you're into an infinite regress of a cause, of a cause, of a cause. And that's why they did not accept the idea of a first moment of creation.
Thank you. Next question from Rebecca McKnight. After all of your experience amidst the tide of life, do you feel life is beautiful and worth living?
Oh, yes. I love it.
Should I move to next question?
I think that's all I need to say about it. That's why I so much enjoy the Scrooge story. To awaken is to understand all that life offers. But it's just in the living. When people say that Buddhists, and I'm going to speak about this in my next lecture next month, on emptiness. So I won't get into that too much. Go to another question.
Thank you. Next question from Lorraine Vedi. The suffering of attachment seems to be a double-edged sword. The longer you live, the less you attach. The young, if they are wise, will take life as it comes. Those who cannot, young or old, will suffer in much the same way. Do you see a difference in the ability of the old to suffer more than the younger generation, or is suffering the same for everyone? Thank you for your wonderful lectures.
If you've ever had a child who's lost their teddy bear, and they are really crushed, and they're in tears, and nothing in life is worth living because their teddy bear is missing. You don't make fun of such a child. You don't tell them, oh, come on. When you're 50 years old, this won't mean a thing to you. You will look back and you'll smirk and laugh at yourself for thinking this was such a big deal. Just get over it. That's not how we deal with our children. Children suffer. Old people suffer. Everybody suffers. That's what makes us a family, us humans. We share this. That's what makes us compassionate toward each other. We recognize that we share this thing called dissatisfaction. We share this thing called suffering because things are not the way we wish they were. So it's not something which you have only in middle age. So when I say I enjoy life, I do enjoy life. And what I'm struggling with in my old age is I'm trying not to be too disappointed in it. I'm trying to say, instead of being disappointed in life, because I can't figure out the meaning of what's happened to me, or why did I grow? How did I grow old? How did I get to be 88? I don't remember that happening. It just woke up one morning and here I am. It's true. The Buddhist teaching is, it is true. We are dissatisfied. We don't know what to do sometimes with what's happening to us. And we wonder, what is the meaning of this? Why does this happen to me? everybody has that. The Buddhists say the reason why it seems so painful is because we have a wrong view of what's happening. So I'm going to take that up again next month. I'll talk to you again about emptiness.
Thank you. Next question from, it seems like Professor Chan Wu. What is the difference between change and transformation?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I guess, John, I'm trying to understand that all change in a way is transformation. I don't interpret it as transformation, though. I interpret change as growing old, my car getting beaten up and old. I look at change from a negative point of view. But without change, there can be nothing new. There can be no innovation. There can be no invention. So change is transformative, like it or not. Sometimes I don't like what I see happening, but that's my interpretation of what's happening. And if I want to hold on to being 24, change is going to be really pretty negative, because that is all going to no longer work for me, no longer even be a part of me. I'm going to be invisible in terms of, it's going to fade, and I'm going to be really sad because I'm holding on to it so much. So I think we all have to do this. To be able to say, if everything changes, then everything changes. And like my granddaughter was saying to me, just get that under your hat and let's go on and play the game. So, but I do think, from another perspective, if we come in contact with something which we do not like, it's a little bit like when we see our children being so tied to their cell phones. What do we do with that? What we need to do in such situations is to transform that experience. If you don't like what they're doing with their cell phones, we ought to make sure that we can provide them with the content that they're at least going to be looking at. I say that my generation, one of the greatest failures we had from the perspective of an educator, we did not make television an instrument of education. We ignored it. We left it to entertainment. And we lost the transformative potential of what television could have been very early on. The same thing with the computer, the same thing with cell phones, the same whatever it is that we are dealing with, we should ask ourselves the question of how can we transform it? Instead of spending all our time trying to tell kids and taking their cell phones away from them, transform their use of that thing. If you can, think about how to make that a better experience for them. How can you do that? So I truly do like to believe in transformation. Thank you.
We have 3 more questions to go. The next question is, what is the foundation of Atma or ego? Why are we practicing if there is no Atma or self?
There is no, I have had to accept, and I think you will have to accept it too. There is no permanent, unchanging entity which can be called us. There just isn't. And yet, we can go on living. We don't need it. Who had the idea that the only time you can really live in this world is if you have an unchanging self? What a horrible thought. An unchanging self? You mean I would be the same as I was at 6 months for the rest of my life because myself is going to be unchanging? No, I don't want it. So when we think about change and we think about these issues, and then we say, well, if it's like that, then nothing matters. When in fact, it's the opposite. Everything matters because we're living in the moment, basically. And it's in this moment that everything is impacting on us. So I've become absolutely so pleased. And I have to keep reminding myself because my brain takes me back to the old pattern that there is a Lou and Lou exists and Lou has been the same and Lou keeps on going. And I have to pull up back from it and say, what's important is what's happening right now. So that's why I say to all of you who take the class or all of you who are listening to this lecture, you should ask yourself right now, what happened to me tonight? Something happened. Something is always happening. How can I become aware of what's happened to me? How can I become aware of the reality that is functioning in a given moment? Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Next question from Riverine. In terms of anicca or anitya, how do we remain with a mind in awe and wonder of change, but at the same time work toward some form sustainability or semi-permanence?
As long as you believe that everything has a cause, you have a chain of events that are connected we are not disconnected from that chain of causation. To say somehow that since everything is impermanent or everything is momentary, that then we have no past, we have no history. From one perspective, none of us would be here tonight in this, the way that we are tonight. None of us would be here unless everything that has happened, happened. You can't decide how far back do I go when it had no effect on me. You can't find that place. We live in because everything has a cause. And we live in this ever-changing causal framework. That's why the Buddhists put so much focus on karma. Karma is action. It's the acts which have determined to large measure what we think and what we do. I showed you the picture of my great-grandfather. I didn't come into the world totally disconnected with anything in the past. I came into the world with the DNA that obviously has been going back in a lineage of my family for generations. I am the result of causation. I carry the baggage of all of my heritage. We all carry the baggage of the heritage of all human beings. So never think that just because something is impermanent that you don't have an event. Okay.
Last question from Venerable Joe, Australia. Loneliness and mental health are becoming big issues among young adults, especially due to lockdown. So
Yeah.
what advice do you have for youth who are facing the fear of social isolation at a time when they desire being physically in communities?
It's such a problem. I feel so sorry in many ways for this generation of youth who have particularly teenage years where it's so important to be with your peers. And suddenly you can't. I think we who are trying to help the younger generation get through this pandemic have to understand that it is very hard. However, at the same moment that it is hard, I watch my granddaughters. They're in touch with all of their friends through that thing held in their hand. They're constantly in touch. So in a sense, they have transformed the iPhone into something which allows them to have a social experience even during lockdown. And aren't we fortunate that we have the technology like Zoom that we can all be together like this? We need to help our young people and other people who are to get them to become involved. And I hesitate to say this, but one of the results of this pandemic is to say to the world, we live in the digital age. You thought you might be able not to pay much attention to it and to avoid it and hope that you could live out your days without having much to do with it. And suddenly, we can't do that anymore. So let's transform it and try to help the lonely and particularly elderly people. If you see an elderly person who finally gets acquainted with an iPad for the first time, it can be transformative for them. And it's possible. We old people can still learn. But so I agree with you, Venerable Jorway. I have great sympathy. A part of life that we've known that is not being lived by this generation, and they'll never be able to recover it. They never will. So we have to really work at it. And all of you who work with children in any way need to help them as much as possible deal with this isolation.
Thank you, Lou, for answering all the questions. So before we end our lecture, I want to request Dr. Lancaster to say a few words on your upcoming Spring 2021 course.
I think, Christopher, you have just a quick little, this is promotion. So if you want to hear the promotion, a number of you have said that you're interested in my next semester course, and that is on perfection of wisdom. So the perfection of wisdom is what I'll be giving the course on, and for those of you who are interested, you might just watch this. Thank you very much for your interest in the course Prajnaparamita, Early Mahayana Buddhism. This course will focus on the developments in India just before the turn of the Common Era. At that time, that is the 1st or 2nd century before the Common Era, there was the appearance of written Buddhist texts. Prior to this event, Buddhist teachings were only preserved as oral memory of the teachings of the Buddha. The technology of writing was just beginning to be used in Indian cultural and social spheres, and the Buddhists were early adopters of it. Inscription on palm leaves and systems of copying and preserving these written words was presented by a group who possessed teachings which they called Prajnaparamita, perfection of wisdom. In class, we will explore this new form of literature and the impact it had on Buddhism. In the text, we find the first identification of Mahayana, literally the great vehicle. Questions of how this teaching compared to the oral memory tradition found in the Pali language revealed both adherence to the received material as well as innovations appearing for the first time in the Prajnaparamita family of texts. We will look for the use of the wisdom literature in Sanskrit, Chinese, and Tibetan versions. Now, students will be asked to take a topic from a Prajnaparamita text and document references to the topic found in any of the language versions of the sutra, including English translations. Topics can range from doctrinal terms such as emptiness, thusness, full perfect enlightenment, to social references such as good teachers, gentle sons and daughters, Indra, chakra, military terms, and even medical ones. If you are interested, I look forward to seeing you in this course. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Once again, thank you, Lou, for a wonderful talk. We'll look forward to having you again on Tuesday, January 19th.
Thank you.
And the topic of next lecture is emptiness, not nothing. And at last, I would like to thank President Ta and CEO Dr. Jane Ibomura, Chris Johnson, Venerable D, and Graduate Council member, Venerable Srinanda, Fong Sam, Violet, Nati, Vaisali for their help. And without their help, it would not have been successful. And thank you everyone for attending, and happy holidays, and have a good night. Thank you.